All right, folks. Well, you're in for a treat when you hear that tune because it's time for another week of the Rec Poker Podcast. I'm your host, Jim Reid, Bluffsterini in the home game and at Rec Poker Jim on socials. And I have the best freaking job in the world talking poker with my friends here on the Strategy Forums edition of the show every Monday night while we steal each other's chips in the free nightly home game. Now, I want to mention that we're brought to you by Running Aces. They are the official sponsor of the Rec Poker Podcast. They're located less than an hour north of the Twin Cities in the beautiful state of Minnesota. Find out more about them at runaces.com. I think if you're hearing this on the day it comes out, it's Tuesday, January 28th. You've still got a few days to get your own little butt up to Running Aces Hotel Racetrack and Casino because it's Rec Poker weekend at Running Aces. We're going to be having a great time there all weekend. Special tournaments, cash games, meetup games, drinks, food, social events. We're going to help benefit a local food bank. So do come out and have a lot of fun. We'll probably come back in the summer, but what beats late January in Minnesota? You got to be a part of that kind of magical experience. So the reason that I want to thank our sponsors so much is because we are a largely volunteer-based organization here at Rec Poker, and so we really depend on their support. So thank you, Running Aces, and thanks to all our premium members who chip in their $22 a month to help us out. If you're listening along and you think the podcast's fun and you'd like to talk poker with some friendly folks like us, if you don't have $22, that's okay. If you make a donation of any amount to your local food bank and send us the receipt, we'll credit you with a free first month at Rec Poker to say thanks for helping out a fellow human. And you're exactly the kind of person we'd like to see more of. So please do support your local food bank and just come sign up for a free account over at Rec Poker, where all it takes is an email address and a smile. Now, you get used to hearing my voice on Mondays because they let me host the show, but it takes a group, a gang, a crew to make all the magic happen around here. We call our group of wizards the Wrecking Crew. And if you want to learn more about me or the rest of the Wrecking Crew, you can go to rec.poker/crew, or you can listen up because you're going to meet a few of them right here tonight on the air, starting with the only, the one, the man, Chris Jones.
The only the one, the man. You'll find me, Chris Jones, or 5v5 on socials, and I help run our monthly strategy segment called The Deep Dive.
And I'm Rob Washington. You find me as Bradley on 15, spot over there. First, third. Wednesdays are 5 million. Posting the book study.
Now, Rob, your audio is coming through a little oddly there. I don't know if maybe we can do a mic check or something in the background while we're going here, but I don't want to miss any excellent nuggets from Rob Washam, who you can find in the book study on the first and third Wednesdays of every month. That while Rob's working on that, one of the perks of being a premium member here at Rec Poker is that you get to come join us on the forums edition of the podcast. So we're joined by DJ, who's been a premium member here for a couple years now, and a good buddy of mine. It's always nice to chat strategy with you, DJ. Thanks for coming on the show. Where can Rec Poker folks find you? What's your handle in the home game, or if you have a social media presence, please jump in and share it with us.
Yeah, I'm DJ on the Discord. I'm Hawk Plays 85, same on the forums. I think it's the same during the home game. It's either Hawk Plays 85 or 85 Hawk just about everywhere. And then I'm on Blue Sky, but I don't know how they work their usernames.
It is a little more complicated. But yeah, thanks for joining us, DJ. And of course, if you've got any questions or comments, feel free to just unmute and jump in at any time. So we're talking about a hand today that's not actually from the forums, but this is a hand that I actually played in the World Poker Tour Prime event. That's an $1,100 tournament that they do leading up to the championship, and it is a great tournament. It's 4 day ones, one re-entry per flight, so you could enter up to 8 times. And I've played in this 2 years in a row now, and everyone loves this tournament so much. Like all the pros are just max firing at this tournament. It's so crazy. Like they want to be on the other side of that bag. There's a big prize up top. It's an $1,100 entry tournament, which is no small potatoes, but it's not like, like a main event or something like that. So it's a good mix of kind of an accessible price point. Um, It's not just full re-entry, which I hate, that people can just like literally fire all day until they double up and make a stack. I think that's not a great format for recreational players. But one re-entry per day, fine. I'd honestly, I'd rather it was just one re-entry period over the course of the entire tournament, but we're not here to nitpick yet. Just wait till you get to the action. Then we'll be all sorts of nitpicking. That's kind of what we do. So this is in the prime. Really good tournament, really good structure. Never felt rushed. Had a fun table. Was playing with Gloria Jackson, and at one end of the table, and our own Jerry from the Patch People, who's for some reason whose last name escapes me right now. That's terrible.
Enough. Enough.
Kniff.
Yeah, Jerry
Kniff.
Kniff, exactly. And we were, so I sat down at the table. I looked around, kind of like, sizing people up a little, and this guy to my left looked kind of familiar, but like I've been in Vegas for a while. Like we're playing a lot of poker. It's kind of a small world. And he was not very talkative. He was not very talkative at all. And we played a couple orbits, and I think I got him to smile once, which is always a key goal for me anytime I'm playing poker and someone's kind of like tight-lipped or just feeling tight. And so as soon as I got him to smile, I was like, "Oh, my name's Jim." And he looked at me and he was like, "Oh yeah." And he looks down at the rec poker shot glass on the table. He's like, "I'm Jerry." I was like, "Oh, nice to meet you." Oh, Jerry! I couldn't believe it took me so long to recognize him. Such a fun guy and a big part of like Minnesota poker as well. So I hadn't seen him in a couple of years, but it was really fun to make that reconnection. Maybe we'll see him up at Running Aces at the end of the month. Wouldn't that be great? Anyway, let's talk poker. Fun table, good group. This is after dinner on day one, and the I was in the one seat, which I freaking hate. I hate the one seat so much. I slow the action down all the time. I can't tell if the freaking nine seat has their chips in, if their cards are in play or not. I'm like always getting reminded that it's my action. I hate it. I hate the one seat.
Yeah, it's the worst seat
Yeah,
by
it's
far.
the worst seat. Is it worse than the nine? The
For
nine's a
sure.
terrible seat as well.
It's way worse than the 9. To
What makes it? We'll talk about it for
Can't
a
see to
second
the
here.
left.
yeah, the
You're looking to
dealers.
the left.
Yeah,
No, in the
When you're
in
in
the
the
one you can look to the left, but you can't look to the right. In
Right.
the nine, you can't look to the left because the dealer's in the
Oh
way.
yeah, you're right. Yeah.
So
But
which one?
action starts to your right, so you want to be
Right.
able to look
Yes.
right. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
I guess like looking to your left matters if you really are, concerned about that person to your left, but there's more players to your right, there's more players to your right. So
I
don't know.
think
I like
yeah.
I personally I think I would prefer the one seat over the nine seat.
not me.
Chris,
I personally,
Chris.
because I really want to look left before I
I
make a
get I
play.
get that, and that makes sense. But I hate, like, there's a part of me that just like, I hate being the person who's like,
Hmm.
what did you do? What's going on? And they're all looking at you like, just play. What are you doing? And like, I'm constantly not knowing if they folded. The You can't look at any other seat at the table. You can look at the dealer who like looks at you. In the one seat, it's like, are you looking at me? What's going on? I don't know. I hate it so much.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm
They both suck. Sorry, someone else jumping in there?
oh I'm 5'10", so like trying to crane my neck around a dealer to see what's
Yeah.
going on to the right of me is just not going to happen.
Yeah.
And you always
Um,
have some guy in the 9 seat that's like, like just
got the
like
arm out.
got the arm
Yeah.
out and be like, come on, man, just like
Anybody that has their hands over their cards, period, bugs the shit out of me.
Yeah, that's annoying.
agreed.
Tell us how you really feel, Rob. That's great.
It really bugs the shit out of me.
So
I almost swore earlier about how much I hate the goddamn one seat. So yeah, maybe I will
I
now.
so I went to a bar league tournament the other week, and the hardest thing was counting people's chips because
Yeah.
everybody's hands were on the table,
Right.
like just
Yeah.
covering everything up. And I'm just like, okay, like I think I actually I put somebody all in without knowing it because I couldn't see any of their chips.
Right.
Right. Yes. Uh, yeah, the one and the nine. I mean, the nine. I like looking left at DJ honestly because I think you can elicit some information from your opponents
Mhm.
about how interested they are in playing the hand. So I might choose to open a hand that is on the cusp of opening or folding if the player to my left is like obviously disinterested, and if they're in the blinds or on the button or like whatever the position is that makes them really relevant. So I think there is some non-trivial value to being able to look left and like people should do it before every pre-flop action. Just look left and just gauge the interest of the players two to your left. Um, and as Chris points out, the one not being able to look right is just it's less of a strategic disadvantage and it's more the sort of like meta game social disadvantage where now you're like never really comfortable. Like, is it my turn? Isn't it my turn? I'm always asking like how much is it? Because they'd like put the chips out right in front of them and have their hand on the table and you can't see it. So it kind of puts me off my game a little bit. And like Chris, I just don't like being the reason
And
why the
I
game's
end
going
up the
slow. And
thing that because like I am often looking to my left,
yeah.
and in the one seat, I end up paying so much of attention to the player in the nine seat. Like, have they acted what
Mm,
that I'm not paying attention to the rest of the table.
yeah.
And that's the other reason I hate it.
Does anyone have a favorite? This is like way up. This we didn't even want to talk about seats at all when we decided to do this hand, but like this is kind of interesting conversation. Does anyone have like a favorite seat or like tiers? Are there tiers to our seats? DJ, what about you? You unmuted there.
So so I have to sometimes use a walker to get around if I'm, having some health issues. But if I just have my cane, the five seat's great. But if I have
Yeah,
the walker, I need like the three or the what would it be like the eight, so that I can have
yeah,
that corner where I can put my stuff out of the way, but still
Hmm.
see everywhere on the table.
yeah. Chris, what about you or Rob?
Three through seven are all equal to me, all
Yeah,
equally good.
Yeah.
Um, two and eight I'll take, one and nine I hate.
yeah.
I like the ones in the middle, like 4 and 5, because as I've gotten older, my eyesight is not as good as it was. So when I'm on the end, like in 3 or 8, the some depending on the size of the table, ones at Horseshoe were huge.
Hmm.
So every time I looked at the flop, if it was 3 red cards, I didn't know if there were 3 hearts or 3 diamonds because
Mm.
they were just
Mm.
kind of merged all together. Whereas if you're in the 4 or 5 seat, it's very clear.
Yep.
Opera goggles. You need to get the opera
Yeah.
Oh,
binoculars.
Yeah, get the opera glasses. That's right. Yeah, what do we see down there? Yeah. I have seen people playing with like people with visual impairment playing with like devices that allow them
mhm.
to see their own cards or the flop. And like
Yep.
they, if you are someone who's struggling with visual care, visual if you need a visual aid, often rooms will accommodate that by giving you the five seat if you speak to the floor. It's difficult to do in some tournaments. For cash gables, it should never be a problem to get you a seat that you're comfortable with. For tournaments, it's a little trickier because of the randomization of the table draws, but I have seen what they will do is maybe just rotate everyone at the table so that everyone's in a different seat, but the order of seats is the same. Um, then yeah, I've seen that, but it's nice. It's a nice function. Personally, I'm also a fan of like the three or the seven. I like to be looking down the table, and I can still see the one and the nine no matter what. But in the five seat, sometimes I feel like I'm just like going back and forth too much. And if I'm in the three or the seven, I can really just kind of like take in the whole table without craning my neck around too much. So
Mhm.
that's probably my favorite. All right, well, good show, guys. That was a really
All right.
fun. So yeah, and
This has been
there you go.
what's your favorite seat with
Yeah. Um, so in all seriousness, this is relatively late on day one. It's after dinner, but still just a ton of people away from the bubble. So I am in the big blind with 23 big blinds.
Can I ask a
And
question
Chris,
just
yeah, please.
logistically?
Yeah.
So, do you cash if you bag? Is that the goal to make day two you're in the money?
If not, like practically so.
Okay,
Yes.
okay,
Yeah, that was the goal. To get the bag and continue in the money on day two. Um, I'm pretty sure I was treating it as though that was the case.
okay.
Um, so I'm in the one, and there's like these three guys in the 7, 8, 9 who all look identical and all play identically. They're like these three Euro regs, and they're just like always opening, always using small sizes, never calling anyone who opens in front of them, just three betting, like very aggressive players are always taking the aggressive action. They're opening every time it folds to them. And so there was this kind of dynamic that was um like I had three bet more frequently against these players because they were opening a lot and I was to their left. Um, but I think they were kind of like getting the message that I was three betting a little more frequently. And so I'd already decided I just I wasn't going to be three betting as light because I was doing it too frequently and they were starting to think that I might not always have a premium hand. Don't tell. Um, so anyway, the player folds around to the player on the button who's on a 12 big blind stack, and they open to two big blinds. So in a vacuum, you might think, okay, well, that's actually a sign of strength that this player is min opening off a relatively small stack like that. I did consider that, but the fact is, this guy and the other players in his corner posse over there. We're doing this routinely. They'd go up in stack, the stack would go down. They were playing a ton of hands, and they were min opening off small stack. So it didn't send off alarm bells like, oh, it's aces because they're trying to trap and get action with a min open off a small stack. Um, so they
Do you think they
open,
had? Can I just? Do you think he
yeah.
had a shoving? I mean, have you seen him shove with this short stack with anything in this kind of dynamic?
I don't think so. I don't
Okay,
think I had, but they must have. Like I can't. They seemed like thoughtful players. Like I don't think they were just like feel players. So I'm sure he did have a shoving range and maybe we just hadn't seen it or maybe he had been deeper
sure.
stacked at that time, but I think I would have made a note in my mind that like they're not just always min opening. But
Okay,
it's a good question. I didn't write that down.
okay.
DJ, you unmuted there.
Yeah, so Chris hit one of them. My next one was the prime big blind bounty, big blind ante.
Uh this one was yes, it is big blind
So
ante.
okay, so it's two, four, so seven in the pot to you.
One, two, three, four, 4.5.
Four and
So
a
I'm in
half.
the yeah, I'm in the big blind. So I've put the ante in, that's one, and my big
Five.
blind.
Okay.
They open to two, and then the small blind's in there for half. So yeah,
Okay.
4.5. Yeah,
Okay.
good question. Let's get the math
And
down.
then you said you're not going to be three betting these people light. With them at 12, you're going to pretty much any three bet you're putting them in, right?
Yes, 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 yeah.
So you're looking at what, tens plus?
Yeah, I think probably that's a good question. I honestly I hadn't developed a range in my mind at that point. Very stack depth dependent, but I guess it was my sense was I'm only going to do this with a linear range. I'm not going to do it with a polarized range as much.
Right.
So yeah, I don't know if that actually answers your question,
No, yeah,
but
that's where I'm at. Yeah, like you're
yeah,
saying tens plus, ace king, ace queen. Yeah, you're not gonna let them just come in with something better, pretty much, right?
right, yeah. Um, and I did consider. So I looked down at 10 of hearts, 5 of hearts. Um, So we joke about 10-5 being such a great hand because it blocks every straight, which is really
Yeah,
nice.
does
And
does
Yeah, but
true.
this one is suited, so it
this one's
doesn't
suited.
block as many straights, and you can't
Uh,
make as many straights.
Yeah, I can only make one flush. I'm only blocking one flush. It's
Yeah.
still
Yeah,
blocking all the straights,
you're
but
only, yeah, you're only blocking, yeah, not as many straights.
um, so I did consider at that point. Honestly, I think all three uh, options are on the table. Folding's a little nitty just because it's suited 10-5. Like it's not a great hand, but a min open from an aggressive player on the button. Like we should be continuing pretty wide to that. But if you're listening along at home and think it's a slam dunk fold, like I don't have a problem with that either. You're gonna end up playing post flop in some uncomfortable positions when you complete the big blind in
Well, when you're suited like that, I think you want to take, it's only one more big blind to see a flop. You've got the guy covered, right? I mean, he's only got
yeah.
12 big blinds and you got 23. I mean, this is a spot I think you have to take.
Mhm.
I would never fold there. I would never fold there. For one big blind, let's be able to see a flop against somebody who has probably a clear defined range because of the stack size.
Yep. And Rob, how small a stack, like does their stack size matter much? Like are you calling even if they have six big blinds, does that turn it into a shove? Or if they had like 20 big blinds, does that
No,
impact
I'm
that at all?
I'm I'm calling just about any stack size that did this from the button
Okay. Yeah. So
because
it's just one of those you're getting too good a price not to, it's not good enough to value bet raise.
right, ask Adrian Mateos what he would do.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I
He's
can
not folding.
guarantee you he's calling that 100% of the time.
Yeah. Chris?
And let me just add one because I actually spent the morning studying a spot pretty similar to this.
Ah,
And I was so I think yes, I'm calling this. But I guess part of the question is you mentioned like we're after dinner, we're kind of on the way. We make the money if we bag, but we're not that close. Um, and one of the I think sort of interesting things that actually surprised me a lot was I was looking at a hand, similar hand where I busted with ace eight of hearts, six of hearts, where I'm in the big blind. Somebody's opened. Now they cover me, but it's a similar dynamic. They had like 19 and I had like 12 big blinds. Um, and but this was like a pretty high. It was a higher ICM spot than I think this was, where we're like
yep.
closer to the money, and the closer we get, the more suited hands we start folding.
Mm.
Where it surprised me how many we start folding in these spots because I would have thought, 12 big blinds. And I've got any kind of somewhat connected suited hand. I got to put one big blind in here. Like it's a great opportunity to sort of double up and whatever. But when you're when the closer we were to sort of end of the night, the more I think this would become a fold. Um, yeah,
And would you shift some of those calls to just like unsuited high rank cards like King X or does your range just shrivel up?
I think your range just shrivels up.
Yeah.
You start dropping off some of these like not great suited hand. I mean, you're already dropping some of the not great unsuited hands, and
Hmm.
then in with that kind of level of pressure, you start dropping some of those
Yep.
not great suited hands. So
Makes sense. Because
yeah,
the cost of losing like a flip is worse when you're
right,
closer to the
right,
money,
right,
right? So your
right.
stack is like more
And
valuable.
like
Like losing it is
like
more
the hand that
valuable.
I'm talking about, I had ace eight six of hearts. Flop comes king six three. Like now what are you doing, right? And like
Yeah.
it's one of these. So like you get yourself into, and the same thing can happen with 10-5 suited, where you're just like you get yourself into like pickles, where you're like, well, I mean, now what do I do? So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Especially out of position. It makes for some
right,
very uncomfortable post flop
right,
play.
right,
DJ,
right.
you unmuted.
So I'm just kind of following around along in Flopzilla here.
Cool.
So is the 10-5 like the lowest you're kind of calling here? Are you gonna play all your tens?
Um, it's
So,
got to be pretty. I don't think I'm playing all my tens, so it's
like
got to be close.
I'm guessing you're playing all suited jacks
Yeah. And then the
and
lower ones I'm on it, they're more connected, so
yeah.
it's got to be one of the worst ones, I think.
Okay.
That's a good point. But I mean, I'm calling 5-4 of
Right.
hearts. Like I'm calling 5-6 of hearts. Am I not going to call 5-10 of hearts? Like I guess I am. So is it like
All
nine
suited
three of
fives.
hearts? Am I not calling? Like some of those weird, like real dangler hands, I guess I'm not continuing with. Um, But yeah, it's in that tier of like I must defend these, so I will. But it's not like slam dunk value town, you know.
Yay.
That being said, I considered just shoving. Like this guy's opening every button. He's got to be folding sometimes. They've seen me three betting a lot, but they haven't seen me shove because like the stacks haven't been effective yet for that. Um, and but I had in my mind already like I've been three betting these guys. Like they're not going to give me credit for the three bet as much. Then they might even be doing like maybe this is a little trap with the min open because it's such a shovable spot. Um, so I did consider calling. I did consider shoving. I did not consider three betting and just not all in.
Mm.
Um, and just like not necessarily clicking it back, but kind of giving them a trivial decision. I'm not sure you gain enough by doing that.
Valid.
Um, yeah, but it's something I'm trying to like just keep my mind open for.
Mhm.
Um, and I was reminded of a hand I saw Taylor Moss play a couple years ago, and well, I think we mentioned this on the show a couple weeks ago where he was getting good odds in the big blind with like six or seven bigs or something like that to just close the action in a multi-way spot. And he did with 10-4 offsuit. And then he ended up flopping two pair and tripling up. And it was like the guys at the table couldn't believe, oh my God, I can't believe you called with 10-4 offsuit. But that was in my mind the sort of notion that as effective stacks get smaller, you're actually like if you make a pair, get it in. So like
Mhm.
kickers don't matter
Yep.
as much. The ability to make strong hands don't matter as much. It's like if you're getting the right price and stacks are pretty small, it's just not that big a mistake to even like not get it in great when stacks are that small. Don't take the wrong message from this, Rec Poker Nation. But like when the effective stack is like nine big blinds, I don't know. I'm always torn with like just fold everything until you get to the spot where you can shove. That's kind of like what's
No.
beaten into us as players as we're coming up in the game is like don't call, don't play hands when you're short stacked. Just like save it up for when you want to shove over top of an open and maximize your fold equity. And I think that's like a good way to get people to start thinking about fold equity and the power of aggression. But I do think you leave some money on the table when you don't just close the action, see a flop, and play poker, even if it's out of position with not a very strong hand. So
You look at
that
your SPR in that spot, and
Right.
yeah, you hit you hit a five, a 10, or two hearts, and it's
right.
the money's going in.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
There's you just you have to.
That was generally my thinking. And I when I introduced this hand to the panel before we started talking, I was like, I'm not sure it's even that interesting a hand, but it gets us into a couple interesting conversation points. And I didn't even wasn't even thinking about your favorite seat at the table. Um, so I did call. Um, and I got a pretty good flop. So the flop comes 10, 7, 6, two tone, but no hearts. So I think we're checking all the time here. Uh, Maybe if it was a slightly different board, slightly lower board, if instead of 10, 7, 6, if it was like 7, 6, 4 or something, that's a board I'd like to donk on sometimes. Um, but in this spot, I think I'm just kind of like checking range, and my expectation was they were going to bet, and I was going to well either raise or call. I hadn't really made up my mind yet. DJ, what's on your mind? You
Yeah,
unmuted there.
do you have any idea whether the 10 was suited with the other ones or it was the 6-7 or
Um,
suited?
I don't. Great
Okay.
question, and I don't remember.
Because that changes some of the combos that are going to be available, right? Like,
Yes. Yeah, definitely. And I love that. I love that you're thinking about that kind of stuff because yeah.
because
Um,
if that six
although
seven, if the 6-7 are suited, there's much more of those two, those kind of two pairish and
yeah, because they're only removing that one
yeah,
suit
that one
of
suit,
combos from
and
their
you're
opening range there.
So think about this. Why wouldn't you just jam there?
Honestly, because I got greedy, Rob, and I said, I'm probably gonna jam here, but I'd like to get like two more big blinds when I do. Because he's gonna see bet small here for one or two big blinds or something like that. And jamming just kind of like allows him to play perfectly. So
Yeah,
I didn't want to do
and
that.
that's okay.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
We're not talking. I mean, when we're sitting there with what'd you have, 23 big blinds?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're going to put so much pressure on him. The fold equity you have is huge.
Mm.
And if he does call, you still have equity because you have top pair.
Yep.
So I I don't know how you can, because he only has what, six big blinds you said
No,
when
he
he
started
opened?
with 12. He started with 12,
Okay.
open for two, so he's got 10
Yep.
back.
Yeah.
So, but
I'm this
yeah, he's
is
like, yeah, get it in.
I'm just jam, let's go.
All
Yeah,
right. All
I
right.
I was 100% on the check line, but then I think about if you check raise, they're priced into calling you just because
Yeah.
everything like if they're betting there, that means they're going down to so they probably have like 10 right now, 10 big blinds.
Yeah,
So
they could bet one. Like
they
they
could bet
could bet
one,
one and that would leave them with nine. And
nine nine.
I think they would do that. Like they're not they're savvy enough to know that you can apply, a lot of pressure with micro bets and stuff like that. But DJ, what does
I
that
was
say to
just
you?
thinking, yeah, I think Rob has me can the donk shove seems really good here.
Hmm. Hmm.
Uh, I would prefer it to be hearts, but
Yes, of
yeah,
course.
the two tones with hearts, and I'd like to have a pair plus a flush draw, but uh, yeah, you've got what backdoor? You got a backdoor straight. You've
Yep.
yeah, you've
The
got the
top
top
pair.
pair. So like just
Kickers don't mean anything at this stack
right.
depth. You know what I mean? It's just not that much of a big difference of what kickers are. You're not
Hmm.
really afraid. I mean, if he has ace 10, yeah, he's that's, it happens. But how many other hands does he have
Yes.
that you're going to put so much pressure on that he can't continue?
And the argument for your donk shove, like another argument for it is like there really aren't a lot of good turn cards for us either. Like we don't want to see jacks, queens, kings, or aces. We don't really even want to see like the middle cards just like bring more straight potential to the board, not always for us. Chris Jones, you're looking pensive. What are your thoughts
Well,
on it?
I'm just trying to think about I'm I was kind of thinking about a donk lead here as well.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, but I am trying to my thought was that we would donk lead small.
Hmm.
Um, and so I'm trying to consider what are we gain. I think what we're gaining by shoving is we are just capturing I mean, we're just getting it in with their, I forget whatever the two-tone suit is, whatever it is, right?
Yep.
Then whatever, if it's diamonds and they have diamonds, we're just getting it in with that. Whereas if we lead small and they jam on us,
Mm.
um, that is a fairly strong range. It's either, a very strong like draw, suited draw, or it's a hand that beats ours. And I'm not. I still think I like a small bet. I think I like the small bet because it gives us more maneuverability. It puts an enormous amount of pressure on a 10 big blind stack. I think about the same amount of pressure. Um, and we don't we don't commit our whole stack to just learn that they have ace 10, right? Like,
Hmm.
you know, that the times we get shoved, it's really hard for them to respond to this donk through a shove back at us. I don't know. That's where I'm thinking. I'm like two and a half, two to two and a half big blind lead
Hmm.
here.
So
Hmm.
I'm trying to figure out where they're going to make their mistake. Is this
Mm.
person if we donk shove, is this person could overcall with cards like like something that they shouldn't have called with, and we're beating them, or they could overfold and we're getting extra fold equity, right? So they have to kind of play our donk shove perfectly to punish us. If we lead small, since they're an aggressive player, they're more likely to come over the top of us. And do we really want to face them coming over the top of us?
Depends on the range, right? I mean,
Yeah,
I,
do you
I
want to?
struggle
Yeah,
with this.
I
I
I, I
struggle with
don't
this all the
know.
time. Yeah.
Like that's what I'm struggling at. So I'm hoping Chris can
I
enlighten me
mean,
here on.
as described, like here's the thing, but as described, if this is like a truly like a like a well-studied Euro type player, I expect them to make fewer errors. I expect them to um but also respect short stack play, respect the fact that a small bet into their 10 big blind stack has an enormous impact on their playability, their future game, their ability to shove and get folds. Um, so yeah, we might get caught in a bluff, and I'm not sure I'm folding if they jam, by the way, but I am considering it because I don't think you can just lightly shove over this because we can have 8-9, we can have two pair, we can have we can have a lot of really strong holdings and probably stronger than they can. They have some overpairs, um, that we don't have,
Mhm.
but this is a good board for us. Um, so I still like the small bet. I like putting that pressure on them, giving us more maneuverability. Um, and I think we're gonna garner almost the same number of folds with
Mhm.
it versus that and the shove.
Mhm.
If
And
you
DJ?
were them and you were facing the small lead by Jim here, is that kind of dragging you into the deep water then? Like that kind of leads to more confusion from their end being a well-studied player?
I mean, I mean, I think fewer players do this, right? I mean, I think somebody who's really well studied will know that this is like like this is a kind of tactic that you might take. Um, but yeah, I think we are putting them also into an more uncomfortable situation than shoving. Like shoving becomes
Mhm.
do do I have a good 10? Do I have an overpair? Do I have a good draw? Okay, yes, check. Let's get it in. Um, and if no, then I tried. But with a small bet, I don't know. I mean, that it gets harder, right? Like if they have a hand like um, what's an interesting hand here? If
10,
they
7,
had
6, two tone.
they have a hand like ace nine
I was gonna say
Mhm.
King Nine of
Yeah.
of
the
whatever,
yeah.
ace nine of not the suit, like ace nine of, let's say that it's two-tone diamonds and they have ace nine of spades.
Yeah.
Um, and you bet small, we're putting them in a pretty challenging spot where they can't shove. I think it's a mistake to call, but they might feel like they have too much and they've already invested too much in the pot. And we're only dodging an ace, really. I mean, well, an ace and an eight. Um, I don't know. There's
Mhm.
some hands here that we put them in difficult spots, which it's trivial for them if we jam. So I like that too.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, I always like the idea of creating opportunities for your opponents to make mistakes, right? So if you think they're more likely to make mistakes versus a smaller sizing than a jam, like that's attractive to me for sure. So I hadn't I so in the so I put this hand out on Twitter after it played out, and no one mentioned a small donk, but they did end up betting, and it looks like he bet under two big blinds. So I what level were we at here? I don't have the blind levels down here because I'm a terrible note taker. But it's one of those things where it's like 800, 1600, so he puts in 3000 instead of 3200, or it's like 1200, 600, 1200, and he puts in 2000 instead of 24. hundred, something like that. So we put in less than two big blinds. Um, so as played, gang, I checked. They make this small bet. Uh, what's our kind of default spot here? We can fold, we can call, we can shove. Um, Someone even advocated for a small check raise, which I thought it didn't cross my mind, but is a pretty nifty maneuver here.
Mhm.
Rob, Chris, why don't you jump in? And then if DJ wants to unmute and
Yeah, I
share
think
his thoughts.
a small check raise is definitely. I don't like the jam anymore.
Hmm.
Because we didn't, we for the jam should have happened. It should have been a donk jam.
Right, right.
That's in my opinion.
Yep.
So when we get here, I think, God, I hate, calling is such a weak a weak thing to do. It's such a passive thing to do. You got top pair. What is he representing with his bet? What has he got? A six? He's got a ace six, ace seven, something like that. I mean, that we're ahead of that crap. Um, if he had if he had an overpair, would he play it this way? Maybe trying to get a little bit more value out of somebody that bought a 10,
Mhm.
maybe. But I think a small check raise to um two 2.5 of whatever he bet would be, you know, would be strong enough that we're saying, hey, I've got something here.
Hmm.
Do you really want to continue? And
Hmm.
make him think about it.
Yeah,
I,
Chris.
yeah, I love it. I love it.
I
I,
almost didn't say it out loud as an option because I think it's counterintuitive in a way. Everyone sees the fold, everyone sees the call, everyone sees the shove. But when they have, what's the math on this now? Like eight big blinds behind, and they've just put, one and three quarter in the middle. Uh, the not all in check raise is a dirty little move. I will admit it did not occur to me in real time.
Mhm.
Um, I don't know if that's because live poker, my brain just isn't as good at immediately like sizing the opponent's stack. So did they have eight big blinds at the time in my mind? Did they have six? Like, can I even check raise small and not have it being all in here? I wasn't sure. Just a note, folks, always pay attention to the exact stack sizes that the other players at the table have. Um, let's say that you could not make a small check raise. Uh, what's your preferred action here then? If you can only fold, call, or shove.
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 Okay. So that was what I did. I took the just less sophisticated answer. Um, and then let me before I give results. So and I think I got the note that the small check raise, that was one of the things that came out on Twitter as well, from some folks that I respect that I was chatting with. I mean, I hope Blue Sky does as well as Twitter did for these conversations because Twitter fucking sucks now, excuse me. And a lot of my friends are on Blue Sky and I like having the conversation, but there's still just like a lot of people that aren't there yet. So I'm still on Twitter a little bit. So it was nice to get that. I had a good follow-up conversation with some of the folks at the table actually, and some old friends. Taylor Moss was one of the people that I think weighed in on the small check raise. So let's say that we think that is the best play. We make the small check raise. We're never folding now, right? Like now they put in 1.75, we make it 4. So they've got 4 back, 5 5 back. And like an SPR of zero point 0.5 or something like that. Like, is there a world in which we're not getting it in? And are we leading every turn, or are we checking, assuming they call, are we checking turn and then letting them decide if they're gonna pay to see the river or not?
So, first of all, I'm not sure that we're not sometimes folding.
That's my question. Yeah,
If
this is my question.
if they bet we kind of min click it back. Um, part of our part of this is that um we want to have a few bluffs in here. We want to have
Sure.
some of our strongest holdings, and then we want to have some of these middling hands that like we're kind of trying to figure out what to do against certain opponents. I think probably against this opponent as described, I'm never folding. But there are definitely times when you do this small check raise where I would for sure be folding once, even though yeah, there's the price and how could you and like we're just always behind against some players if they come over the top here, like
Hmm.
100% of the time. And that's kind of the beauty of this bet. This bet is um, really it, it's so interesting how much you can accomplish with these short stacks. I just watched the Bahama
Oh yeah.
Paradise stream. There was a hand on day four where they're down to like 33 players. Player had 10 big blinds and double check raised as a bluff and got it through.
Wow, yeah. Just a
It,
lot
it
of
was an incredible hand. It's just an absolutely incredible hand. And it made total sense too. Um, and so I think sometimes we do have to be able to fold. But regardless, I think here, um, I like the small bet, but against a player like you're describing that's going to be well studied and going to find bluffs and gonna, um, I can't ever fold this strong of a hand, probably.
yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
Rob, ditto, DJ any.
I agree
Yeah.
100%. If I check raise and he jams, I call.
Yeah,
DJ?
I mean, I'd like to think that I could find a fold somewhere against certain opponents, but I think I'm just like just what the SPR is. Maybe they're doing this with flush plus straight draw, and I can get there.
Right. Yeah.
Well,
Honestly, no, please.
even if he's got an overpair,
Right.
you still have, two tens and three fives, so you
Yep,
still have
five
five
is.
clean outs
Yep.
to an overpair. So
Better
I
than a
don't know.
gut
I
shot.
just, he can't have a single pair that's better than yours. I mean, a one card pair where he paired the board. So yeah, I, I don't know. I don't know how you cannot. But SPR is just too low.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
And
can't.
plus villain type.
Yeah.
Honestly, like guys, when I made top pair, even with the bad kicker, I'd already kind of made up my mind that like if like I'm not folding against this player at this
Yeah.
stack depth. Like I'm just
Any
not.
Yeah.
any kicker 10-2, you're still just
I think so. Yeah,
okay.
honestly,
Yeah.
any kicker
Yeah.
at that point.
Mm.
Like on so many runouts, the kicker isn't even going to be relevant if it's below the
Right.
board at this point, 10-7-6. Like 10-5 is functionally very similar to 10-2 from a kicker point of view. Um, doesn't have the same redraw value, but uh, yeah, so my theory was, and again, I understand this is like not as sophisticated as it should be, was check the flop, let them make a C bet, then I shove, and I still get the benefit of the fold equity. I get to pick up these extra, blind and a quarter or whatever it was that they were putting in for that. Um, but I've really come around to just examining the role of small bets in short stack situations. In fact, that's one of the things, Matt Affleck has been doing a coaching program with me leading up to the WPT. He's going to continue throughout the year as a RecPoker Crew member doing a monthly study group for our members. And one of the things that we'll be doing is sort of like choosing which premium member gets to get like coached up by Matt Affleck that month. Um, for the first month, we won't have a member set yet. So I told him, you're stuck with me, Matt, for another month. And the thing I've asked him to really work on is this short stack play in situations where shoving is not the best spot. I want to encounter more of these, so I'm more comfortable with these smaller bets, smaller raises, because I'm just too quick to shove. I don't know if it's the cash game player in me, but I'm like just not attached enough to that bottom chip in spots like this. And I think I don't recognize that there are more sophisticated plays available than just a
Well,
hammer.
we do have them covered, so
Yeah,
it's no different than, shoving everything but one chip.
right.
Well, could you do the shove everything but one chip for them?
There we go. That's right.
Yeah.
There's probably a good time and a place for that too. Um, so I ended up shoving. They quickly called and showed 10-8 offsuit. So
No.
they so
Oh,
yeah, it was
ugly.
gross. It was gross. Um, so they weren't ever folding. The board was 10-7-6, so they had the top of the straight draw. I had the bottom of the straight draw. Um, and it just goes to show, like this guy, they are opening everything
Hmm.
off a 12 big blind stack there. I mean, I think off like a normal stack, 10-8 is close to the bottom. Like use like suited fives and offsuit aces are going to be, or suited fives and offsuit eights are going to be a lot of the hands that you see opening there. So there are some eights in there. But 10-8 offsuit just felt like a shitty hand. I was just like, God damn it, why'd you have to have a freaking 10-8
Well,
I
offsuit?
that just tells you how many other hands
Yes.
that you were totally dominating that
Yes.
have totally missed this board.
Yeah.
When he's opening 10-8, that means he's opening just about everything.
Mhm.
I mean, I took him up in Flopzilla following along to 50% of hands and didn't have 10-8.
All right, there you go. Okay, thank
Yeah,
you.
that's yeah.
Like,
Thank you, DJ. Thank you.
10-8
yeah,
offsuit.
like
Yeah.
10-8 off. Yeah, I didn't have 10-8 off. Like, I gave him all of the suited tens. Like, he could have shown up with a
Yes.
10-9 or a 10-8 suited or Jack 10 or something, but Jack 10 off. But yeah, 9-8 off. I had 9-8 off in there because I know people like to play that. But
Yep. No, it was, cusp hand. And I like Rob's point that is, normally, and a player like this is going to, I mean, I don't know that that's true, but like generally these small bet aggressive players are going to see bet at a high frequency to a small sizing. Like that's kind of how they get their bread and butter, like making a lot of bets at small sizing. So I think they probably see bet pretty wide, even on a board like this that doesn't smash their range. Although I guess it does if you're opening 10-8 offsuit.
Yeah,
Not that
but
I'm salty. Not that I'm
there's
salty about
hands
it at all. Yeah.
there's hands in his range that would play exactly the same way
Right.
that you crush.
Yeah. Yeah. And maybe that's even an argument for calling and not check raising at all, because you get to give them a little more rope and just let them continue. But then you really have to call down on every turn and river because you've handed them the hammer and you
Well,
can't
yeah,
then,
if you're gonna do that, you're doing it with the awareness that no matter what happens, money's going in.
yeah, yeah. Which was kind of my mindset at the time. So I don't know.
Right.
I still don't know. I still don't know. I'm still not sure the right way to play this. I know I shouldn't fold pre-flop. I'm pretty confident about that. And I can't fold the flop. So is it calling? Is it shoving? Is it a smaller raise? Is it leading the small donk? That was one that didn't come up. I wasn't sure about that. But long story short,
In this particular case, it turned out it didn't matter.
it would not have mattered. No, we
It didn't
were
matter
we were
what
getting
you
it
would
in.
have done
yeah,
because
I
of
No,
the
think
it's
this
true.
actual
was.
hand he had.
I think this was everything was getting in on the flop in some way.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's probably true. I think that's probably true. But I really like this idea of I actually yeah, Mark Zhang is also going to be ramping up his coaching in the new year with RecPoker Premium members, and I'm going to have a conversation with him too because I'm just a greedy guy. I want all the personal coaching I can get from these awesome poker players. So I'm just like, yeah, let's just talk about small stack play that doesn't involve shoving because these real tournament pros like Mark and Matt. Like they really know how to use a small stack and how to apply pressure And like these are the decisions where all the real money is made with these small stacks. By the time you get into the real money of tournaments, we're not playing with cash game stacks anymore. So it's a real opportunity for me to improve here. So I'm excited for that. All right, any other thoughts, gang? Any no? Relatively covered. I think that's a good one. Well, I want to thank DJ and Rob and Chris for sharing their insights with everybody today. I want to thank the Running Aces Hotel, Racetrack, and Casino, of course, for all their support over the years. Everyone who was a big part of my trip to Vegas, and all our listeners at home. Thank you so much for tuning into the Rec Poker Podcast, and we'll see you again next week. Have a good night, everybody.